Okay, I guess that means we are live. Welcome to the 2 hour block, the relaunching of what I like to call SCOP. It's the Semicore official podcast and has been on hiatus for a very long time. And I figured for this special event, we needed to do something special. And bringing this back, rebooting it, seemed like a very cool thing to do. No, no, Kevin Michael Jordan won't be joining us, but we do have a wonderful uh, friend that you all know and love. So, Jen, say hi to everybody again.
All know and love might be a little overextending, but I'm here.
You're here. And what time is it for
Uh,
you?
for me, it's only 12 midnight. So
12
Hawaii time is,
midnight.
yeah, I'm still living a little bit early.
Well, at least it's Sunday. We're on the same day.
That's right. Oh, wow. We finally caught up to each other. That's pretty awesome, actually.
Now, I'm no stranger to recording with people from the islands. My um, good friend and co-host of the Backstage Slam, also a native of Hawaii.
I remember that.
So I understand how syncing schedules could be a bit tricky.
It's only tricky when somebody wants to schedule something at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's tricky.
Yeah, yeah, I can see how that might be an issue, especially since it's 5 a.m. here on the East Coast now. And looking at a sunrise in a couple of hours. By the way, uh, like 5 hours into the 19th, the world hasn't ended yet. So I think we're going to be good to go for a little while.
I hope so. I echo that sentiment. I really hope that everything is going to be okay because I was a little bit worried there for a couple minutes.
If anything happens, though, I'll let you know.
Well, now that my time zone has flipped, we're officially out of the danger zone. It was not out of the danger zone until my time zone flipped, but it's 12:08, so I think we're good.
Well, do you like movies?
No, hate them.
Someone told me once that you liked movies, and I figured, you know what? The Oscars coming up, I could use someone to talk movies with.
Do you know,
And yeah,
Joshua? Do you know that I actually went to college to study cinematography?
I did not know that. What did you
That
learn?
was
Give us the whole course
I
in about
I
5 minutes.
learned don't take an intern job in New York City without finding out what the movie actually is first. That's one.
Okay,
Uh,
this sounds like an
two.
interesting story.
Yeah, probably not a great one for prime time. I'll have to tell that story sometime. Um, second, though, I think I learned that Steven Spielberg had a much harder job than I originally thought. And fourth, um, if you decide to get into film, you probably shouldn't have a family right away. You should probably put that off a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
can see those.
I actually the reason that I bring that up is just because I did study cinema. I then later got into doing a bunch of writing, helping people do adaptations and things like that. And I actually went to the Oscars one year.
Oh,
So
really?
my big Oscar story, yeah, my big Oscar story. It's only one. I only got to go one time, but I was so excited. So every time the Oscars roll around, no matter how bad I think it's going to be, I get super excited.
Well, out of all of the Oscar nominees this year, we'll just say Best Picture. How many did you watch?
Most of them, I think.
The Golden Globes were a different story for me because I think, and let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six. I saw six of the Best Picture nominees, but for the Golden Globes, I saw all of them. And I saw every Best Picture nominee, and it was surprising the differences between those two lists. but I believe the Oscars have a wider, um, well, not necessarily wider, but they encompass all of 2019, whereas the Golden Globes, I think, fit in the end of 2018 also. Um, anything stand out to you? You know what? Let's go over the nominees real quick. For Best Picture, Ford versus Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite.
So the only one on this list that I didn't see was actually there's two. I'm sorry, I misspoke. There's Marriage Story, which I didn't see yet, and Jojo Rabbit, which I didn't see yet.
Really? Because out of this whole list, the only ones I haven't seen are Parasite and Ford versus Ferrari.
Just if I can add a addendum to that, you should definitely see Parasite. That was a really excellently made movie. Very good.
I keep hearing that, and it's been on my to watch list, I guess you could say, for a while now, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
It's very different. It's really different story, very creative storytelling. I liked it a lot.
Then I will have to make sure to bump that up and make my absolute next thing to watch. I'm surprised though that you say you haven't seen Marriage Story, because I mean it's a Netflix movie. It's right there. It's available anytime.
I know, and I actually sat through The Irishman all the way through one sitting. And actually I shouldn't say it like that because I really did like it. I actually have a big part of my heart that loves those kinds of films. But no, I didn't see Marriage Story for so many different reasons. I think one of the biggest is it really kind of, I know what it's about and it hits home in a way that's like a little bit really close to home. So I've sort of been waiting to watch that until I feel like, yeah, I've got the emotional fortitude to watch it.
I did not really have any idea what it was about other than, as Kente put it in the last hour, Kylo Ren and Black Widow being married. And it kept getting all of this acclaim, and I was like, okay, the kids are away for the weekend, so I'll sit down and watch it. Not that it's, any kind of raunchy or anything like that movie. It's just for a movie like that I'm going to sit down and be emotionally invested. I kind of like to have my atmosphere right. And I was knocked for a loop because it does hit really, really close to home in a very hard way. Because I've been through, that story. And you use the exact words that I use when I describe it. It's right there. It hits all of the emotional pressure points.
Right.
And that's why, it's getting so much acclaim, especially from Hollywood. I mean, how many divorces have, Hollywood people been through, right? And to me, that's what made me such a big fan of Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson in the performances they put in. Because how do you put that on screen? Where do you pull from to get that kind of emotion? That it blew me away, and I was really hoping, especially Adam Driver would pull some more recognition. Bring home a couple of pieces of 10.
Yeah, I think Adam Driver is. I actually think that he's a really talented actor, and some of the things that he's been typecast in are they're to his detriment. And I don't mean this in a way like he didn't do a good job. I mean, it's really difficult once you've been typecast in a role as a character to break out of that. And this was super successful. I mean, I know for a fact because I've seen some of the advanced material that there's nothing even close to what he was in any of his previous roles in terms of what that looks like for Marriage Story. So
Well, hopefully this means that Adam Driver will be getting more diverse opportunities and won't just be that Kylo Ren guy. But
right.
out of the movies nominated, who would you give the nod to?
I think I'm gonna go with Joker.
Now, is that because you personally think it's the best movie, or because that's what you think will win?
No, actually, of all the movies that are up here, I think 1917 is the best movie. For lots of different reasons. It actually makes the cinematographer and me uh, absolutely ecstatic to see what they did. But that's technically, visually, story wise, everything. It's sort of the perfect of the perfect. But my guess is that Joker uh, gets the Academy nod because it ticks all the boxes that I know that the Academy likes. Um, it's an underdog story. There are so many social cues in it. It I mean visually it's beautiful. That movie was absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. As grungy and hard to watch as parts of it are, it's almost sublime how they put all of that together to come up with something that was just like I said, it's amazing. But that in and of itself, I think, is not even that's not even the biggest part. I think the biggest part is Joker is at this point one of those stories that's like the social justice of the day, and
Hmm.
it feels like they love that kind of stuff. The only thing that could make Joker better is if it was somehow historical in nature, and then it would be a shoe in. So that's what I think.
So if it was some sort of period piece, you think that would lock it down?
Yeah, if they could tell Joker in some kind of period piece, I think that we wouldn't even be having this question. We would just be going, "Yep, that's where it's going to go."
I can see Joker being set in the 70s. Wouldn't take a
Yeah,
whole lot of tweaking.
yeah. I was thinking more something like Victorian. You know, I mean, obviously that's a huge jump in adaptation, but
I want to see
I'm
it. I want to see that now.
serious. But it really does. I mean, when you think about it, it really does kind of, also the other thing is Hollywood really loves the anti-hero, and we don't get a lot of movies that are successfully made about the anti-hero. So when they come along, they tend to get, I think, accolades that um this movie I think is actually, I do feel like it justly deserves them for sure. But I feel like it gets a little bit over celebrated, and that's where I think this one kind of comes in because there's some
Okay.
really good movies on that list.
Yeah, I saw out of all these movies, I only saw 1917 in the theater.
Oh,
Wait, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I saw it in the theater, but 1917, it was one of those movies where I thought, okay, a war movie, it's got to be a spectacle, right? So I got to see that in the theater for the big effects, and you could tell I didn't know anything about it going in, and yeah, I'm glad I saw it on the big screen because, like you said, the cinematography really pops because it is. I was telling my dad when we were leaving the theater, one of the things that I liked about this was, um, even though it had huge set pieces between, and it's not spoilery, but the towns that were ruined and the huge craters in the ground, um, huge set pieces, right?
yep.
It was still shot very close. You were getting the big stuff in the background, um, It was the backdrop, but it wasn't like any other war movie or action spectacle where you're getting that wide shot of everything just blowing up. It's a very personal, and it's very you get the perspective of the characters the entire time.
Right. And the idea that the movie tries to trick you in some ways, but very successfully so, into thinking that it's done in kind of a one shot piece is it lengthens the drama. It gives this kind of very strong aspect to the visuals that are happening, and it also keeps the story narrative really super simple, which in any other movie I would say, well, maybe that's not such a good thing, but in this movie it works so much to its credit because there is so much happening that if you were to convolute it with too many side pieces, you'd lose the central point to it. And I personally, I just think that from the standpoint of cinematic excellence, this movie gets everything. It gets excellence in dialogue where there is dialogue. Nothing feels wasted in the dialogue here. The just the camera itself is amazing. But then there's the actors who, look, I know that it seems so easy to be in, a war movie and make things explode and react to it and stuff like that. But the stuff that was happening in 1917 felt so incredibly personal. Like, it wasn't just happening around, it was happening to. And that is such a huge differentiation because it allows us as the audience to really have a personal connection with what's happening, right? It's not just happening in the background, it's actually happening strongly to our characters. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And it's a very good point. And it's the reason why I think it should win. I think it's a far better movie than The Joker. And I got to be honest, with The Joker, I was underwhelmed. I mean,
Really?
I'm not saying it's a bad movie by any means. I mean, I thought the performances were excellent. It was well shot. But, it's one of those movies, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, where you're like, okay, like I said, the performances, solid. It was shot beautifully. It just didn't hit that spot for me. And I've been trying to figure out why I don't think Joker is as great as everybody else. And I don't know, maybe it just comes down to I was expecting more Joker.
Mm.
And
Well,
I don't know.
I did hear a lot of people talk about after the movie came out that they were expecting more Batman tie-in. That as a backstory, Joker felt underwhelming in the Batman universe because how does this, even where we see the small ties to the Batman story, it I think it created for most people more questions than answers. But honestly, this is one of the reasons that I think that it was successful. It was successful because it told a story that was a little bit on the fringes of the universe instead of telling the story that was just the DC universe Joker. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? It took its time to get to a place where something bigger was happening without infringing on all of the DC canon that's already come before it, if that makes sense.
I get what you're saying. It like it's getting recognition for being a great comic book movie, but they took out all of the comic book stuff.
Correct. Correct. Which, honestly, to be totally honest, I feel like it that actually worked. I mean, I know I do understand why people are upset about not getting the Batman piece in it, but I also, in retrospect, think about how that movie sort of was presented to audiences, and it feels like it's its own standalone story. I wish more, actually, movies that deal with the backstories of the superheroes would go that direction instead of making everything completely so canon to the universe that there is nothing that we can't expect, because all the things in Joker were truly surprising. At least that's what I think.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we
The,
can.
the, the, the one movie though that I do think that we should talk about on
Okay.
this piece, which again is Best Picture, is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because personally I don't think that the Academy is actually ready to give Tarantino that kind of recognition. Not, I just don't think it's going to happen. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has as many people hating it as people that love it. And I have to say that to me, that feels like a really successful movie, because the reasons that people hate it have a lot to do with the way that he presented what was, well, what was happening. And it, I sort of feel like Tarantino is very successful in that. So, I mean, the fact that it's nominated is amazing and awesome. Um, I don't actually think that it's gonna win, but I do feel like it's kind of a watershed moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess that particular movie, like I said, every time I bring it up, it basically starts a fight every single time, because as many people hate it as love it. So
It's a dark horse for the category for sure, but I mean, with the way it's a ranked voting system, right?
right.
So maybe Joker and 1917 wind up canceling each other out. Who knows? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might be everyone's third favorite movie and accidentally win Best Picture.
Boy, that would be really interesting. That would be really interesting.
But do you think he has a chance to win Best Director? Quentin Tarantino, that is.
No, no, I don't.
It is a pretty loaded field this year with Martin Scorsese and The Irishman, Todd Phillips and The Joker, Sam Mendes 1917, and Bong Joon Ho with Parasite.
Yeah. Um. So either Sam uh, Mendez or uh, or Parasite. I don't know which. I'm not sure, but one of those two, I think. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about Parasite. Parasite is, it's such a horror. Uh, it feels very horror genre, and typically they don't do really well at the Oscars. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it could, but I sort of lean toward 1917 and maybe Martin. I don't know. Maybe The Irishman. The Irishman was good. That was a really good movie. It was long. It was really long, but it was good.
I think it was, safe. I think that's a good word to describe The Irishman. It was safe.
Yeah.
Scorsese just, and I hate to put it this way, but the movie was so safe. Kevin Smith could have directed it.
Oh, that's a pretty good analogy.
A lot of talking, not a whole lot of camera movement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I feel like that's what Martin Scorsese does best. I mean, Martin Scorsese was doing what Martin Scorsese does best. So it made the movie excellent because he wasn't stepping outside the box, you know?
Like when we were talking about Bond earlier, just because you know what you're getting doesn't mean it's bad. It
Right.
just means you know what you're getting. And if somebody does something really well, uh, well, let them do it.
Right.
At least, uh, at least it's good, rather than someone that tries something new and it's just not good at all.
Well, and you know, honestly, this I think is one of the core functions of the academy in some ways keeping people in their quote unquote lane. Um, you're not always given accolades or any kind of preferential treatment when you move outside the not the it's not so much what the public expects as much as this is what we know you for greatness with excuse me, and this is what we want to continue to see. And I don't know, it just feels very like like directors historically sort of get penalized for walking outside their this is what you're known for, you know?
Hmm.
Of course, I mean anything can happen, but I have to say, you know, after last year, and even maybe the year before, with all of the talk about diversifying the Oscars and trying to get more diversity in, um, it just still feels like it is just the good old boys club, without a whole lot of with some token nominations. And I don't know. I don't know how to exactly fix any of this or make it change or whatever, but man, it's so obvious this year that it there just isn't enough diversity in filmmaking right now. And there needs to be a lot more.
Well, I don't know if the question is if there's enough diversity in filmmaking, but there certainly should be thought given to is there enough diversity in recognition of filmmakers?
Right.
Uh, yeah, that's I think that's what the issue is. How do you how do you recognize more diverse filmmakers? One, without you know tokenism, and two, um, I don't know. Part of me wants to say while maintaining the integrity of the academy, but that's not a thing. Uh,
Really?
I mean, look at best directors. We got five guys, right? And one of them is Korean.
Yeah,
I want to
one of
say,
them's Korean.
but all male. And I know people have argued that you couldn't find one female director to nominate it. Well, one, you don't want to. I don't think you want to look at it like that because there were plenty of female directed movies in 2019. Uh, Maybe plenty is not the right word, but there were they were there. Now the question is, how do those films get recognized? And I think that's really the big question. Maybe I don't know. We open up the nomination pool to make it what the people want. But would that just make the People's Choice Awards?
Yeah. See, I actually, I sort of, okay. I've given this. Sorry, I'm definitely coming down with a cold. I've given this just a little bit of thought, and what I think the Academy specifically can do in order to make the Oscars feel as if they are more inclusive and have a little bit more diversity to them, uh, both from a gender perspective and from a the perspective of uh, well, not just minorities, just sort of representing everybody, is they can stop using the same people that they continue to use again and again and again as their sort of go-tos for, hey, this is what we think is excellent. In other words, like, the nominating process itself feels stilted, and I think it's got to come from, inside the actual board, not just, like you said, make some token nominations here and there. I really think that the nominating process itself needs a bit of an overhaul. And I don't think it should be the people, as in the People's Choice Awards. I don't think it should be that. That dilutes the effect. It needs to be a very specific group of people, but that the nominating process for the films itself, that's what needs to change, and the directors and everything else. I mean, that's what needs to change, because if the only effort to single out women in an Academy Award is Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, then we have a problem, because women make up a great deal of the industry, but they do not get recognized. And that, I don't know, that just feels like such a, like, there's got to be something more intrinsic happening here than even maybe we can see, and maybe fixing or overhauling the system is sort of a way to do that, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. The last woman to win Best Director, well, the only one, right? Catherine Bigelow.
Yeah.
Even when she won, even when she was nominated and this and that, every story I saw was accompanied with, oh, and she was married to James Cameron.
Yeah.
Like that has anything to do with what she made.
And honestly, it's that kind of, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that we're going to be able to, in the span of 1 year or 2 years or whatever, wipe through the underlying biases that exist in Hollywood. Because, I mean, let's face it, although most people aren't intimately involved in the industry, right? It's been around for a long time. There are entrenched sort of roles that have been established, and it is real difficult to change those roles in a meaningful way. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep trying, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep calling attention to the kind of inequality that exists when we see it. If we don't keep saying stuff about why the Oscars are so white and why the Oscars are so gender uh, skewed, we give them carte blanche to go keep doing it. And that to me says, no, this is where the people can have a say. The people can have a say by basically demanding some kind of change. And look, the Academy Awards as a show has not done well in recent years. It's done terrible. But that never seems to stop them from continuing to make the same exact choices time after time after time. I mean, the little tiny token changes that they make really don't affect anything. And I feel like that is such a typification. It's such a typification. It is the typification of a larger problem underneath it, which is, look, if you want people to pay attention, you're going to have to change how you're approaching this. Does it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like one of the biggest issues people seem to have with the Academy Awards is the fact that they recognize films but not movies.
Right.
Most of the people that I talk to aren't really, I mean, they like movies, they like going to the movies, but they're not into it. So they won't see, Jojo Rabbit or Parasite. That's just not something that they want to watch. But the new Michael Bay film comes out, they're all over it. Spielberg, they know these names. They recognize the popcorn quality of a lot of these. I don't want to sound detrimental to things like just regular action flicks, superhero flicks, and the biggest complaint I hear from those friends is, well, they don't recognize movies that I watch. And it's true. They don't.
But that does sort of speak to this idea that okay, so I mean, and it's so funny because I think that this perspective is one that we as a whole society are sort of grappling with right now, and that is elitism versus just sort of having professionals understand that there is a way to measure excellence, and it's not just what's popular. And we as a populace have a very difficult time right now separating why, if something isn't popular, it's excellent, or why, if something is excellent, it's not popular. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think, unfortunately, that tends to be what drives the conversation. It's almost like there's this irreverence toward what honest excellence is, and the recognition of that honest excellence. That conversation has to also be had at the same time. So I'm not saying that the Academy should give up its attention to the what excellence actually is, but I will say that I don't like how people look at the Academy or look at the Oscar nomination process and think that somehow because their favorite movie didn't get nominated for Best Picture, that means that somehow it was snubbed or what. I don't actually think that they are snubbed. I mean, sometimes they are, but I think more often than not, yeah, I know, right? There are some, but I think more often than not, it is the level of excellence simply isn't there. It can be a great movie to you, but that doesn't mean it's a great movie, right? You know what I'm saying?
I do believe there's a whole show about movies that aren't, I don't want to say they aren't popular, but they are widely criticized as bad, but some people love them.
That's a good point. And if you watch now Turner Classic Movies and you see what was popular back in a specific era, right? Mm-hmm. You get a very strong understanding of kind of what was being accepted as excellent. What gets critical acclaim and what doesn't. And we have definitely shifted a lot, but the shifting that we have done, I think, from a movie standpoint, is that we were trying to sort of make a catch-all for everything, and you can't make everybody happy in this process, and I don't think you should, because again, we have the Golden Globes, we have the People's Choice Award, we have a bunch of other recognition pieces. The Academy Awards feels like it's supposed to be cut from a different cloth, because that is honestly the way that it should be measured differently. I guess I could say that it should be measured differently, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be measured fairly, right? I mean, right. I'm not saying that a woman has to win every year. I am, however, saying that there should be a woman in every single nominated category. I mean, there's no excuse for there not to be.
Well, it might be difficult for a woman to win Best Actor.
Okay, there is an exception to that. There, you're correct. You are absolutely correct.
I think it's safe to say that because the Academy Award struggles to garner any kind of mass appeal, that they're like the nerdy girl that wants to be popular so bad, but aren't willing to do anything to change,
Mm.
you know? And it doesn't mean that they need to change, but the Academy's goals of higher ratings for the Oscars um, doesn't really follow through with the nominees,
Yeah.
because they're not nominating the movies that people want to see win, and I don't think they should. I don't think Avengers Endgame it's the biggest box office ever, right?
Hmm.
It got one nomination for, I think, visual effects, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be nominated for Best Picture just because it
Yeah.
made the most money.
I definitely agree with that. And I mean, it's easy. It's just so easy to hop overboard when you're talking about what's popular versus uh what has excellence attached to it. It's just so easy to make a correlation between popular opinion um, and this process, which is quite a bit different. Also, the other thing that which I think both hurts and helps the Academy nominating process is that it's secret. It's very secret, and so we don't know exactly. Well, I mean, we know some stuff, but we certainly don't. It's shrouded in mystery, I guess I should say, and because it's shrouded in mystery, you just don't have the kind of transparency that you do with everything else that we're so used to right now. And I think that sort of riles people up a little
You know, one of and I heard about this a while ago. One of the biggest problems with the voting process as a whole is that these ad campaigns and you know things like that, because uh, studios will pour millions and millions of dollars into for your consideration, right?
bit. Hmm.
And one of the things that I found out was a lot of the time the people voting don't watch the movies,
Right. I've heard that too.
and I know some of these things can be a really big time commitment, but I mean it's kind of a big deal. If your job's to pick a winner for a category, maybe you should watch. Just throwing that out there. Maybe you should watch
Right.
all of the nominees.
It seems like such a no-brainer, but yeah, apparently that's not always the case. Also, boy, so I think there's also one other sneaky issue in here, which maybe doesn't get a whole lot of sort of talk time because it's a little bit uncomfortable. But something that seems to come up again and again is why the average person really cares about this and how much of a fuss they can make about their favorite movie not getting an award, or oh, this person was totally robbed and all that. And it becomes so sort of like oddly contentious without really having a whole lot of meaning attached to it, that it's almost like people like to find the fight in whatever is going on. And that also feels like, look, if the Academy, if the Oscars as a whole presentation would be just a tiny bit more um, transparent with their ideas, maybe not giving us, all of the sources, all of the methods, all of that, but maybe giving us just a tiny little glimpse into sort of what's happening and the kind of accountability that people have for making those decisions, maybe people would feel better about it. But again, because there is just nothing, I can understand why people get upset. I really can.
Yeah, and sometimes it seems like the winners are chosen at random
Yes,
with
I
how
feel
off the wall they seem, and I don't know. I have my day job, that I go to, and after an award show, it rang true, especially after Golden Globes. I would show up for work and do the typical, water cooler conversations, right? And start off with, so did anybody watch the Golden Globes? And nope, not one person.
wow.
Did anybody catch the winners? Nope, I don't watch that junk. Like, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna need to find some people to talk about this stuff with.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just in my field, nobody cares, and
Well,
that's unfortunate.
I can, I mean, I can actually understand, entertainment, and this is Hollywood sort of cannibalizing in on itself. They have created a world where, you keep the fans at a distance, and yet you try to pull them in with some Twitter tricks and this and that,
Hmm.
and it's not, it's disingenuous at best, and at worst, it feels like there is some kind of nefariousness behind Hollywood, sort of, or major production companies having their cake and eating it too. Look, we want you to be fans, we want you to be loyal, we want you to podcast about our stuff and, really hype what we're doing. But at the same time, they also are absolutely almost elitist about not giving people any information and making the whole process feel murky and impossible to see through. So I don't know. I mean, like, there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, this is so sad, and there's another part of me that thinks, no, they did this to themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, I want to backtrack just a second. That's okay. To the best picture category. Just so everybody's aware, I had this nice run sheet. We're hitting the time markers, and we're going to roll through this and really nail down some topics here. But now we're off book. We're going throwing all that out the window, and I want to mix one of our other categories, one of our other topics that I wanted to talk about with this. Um, we touched upon it for a second. So snubs, Oscar snubs. We're starting with. We'll just roll through the categories as they come up. So we're going to go back to Best Picture. What came out in 2019 that you thought could be a Best Picture nominee?
Midsummer.
And what's that?
Midsummer.
Okay, I haven't seen that. I know it's on Amazon Prime right now.
That definitely is one that I feel like it absolutely deserved at least a nod, um, because I mean, it was excellent, and everything was excellent, not just the story, but cinematography, the actual dialogue was just out of this world. It just all came together. So that's one. But again, Midsummer was definitely far more in the horror genre, and they just don't get Best Picture nods. They just don't.
Is that the only one?
Um, let's see. What is another? What's the? Oh, there was one. Uh, I'm trying to think. Well, actually, underwater. I think, what was the other one that was? It isn't a. It's not. It's not a horror movie. I have this thing with horror movies right now. I'm particularly obsessed. Um, and so a whole lot of them that I see happen to be that. What was the other one though? There was one that was more straightforward drama that I thought was absolutely epic. Um, and I don't actually remember what it was.
Do you
Oh,
not
I know.
letterboxed?
What?
So do you not letterboxed?
I hold on a second. I've got this in a note actually. Um, Judy. There we go.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the Judy Garland thing.
yeah, I mean, I was actually super surprised by that movie. I did not think it was. I thought I was gonna, like, I would grit my teeth through the whole thing, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. I
I've heard
highly
good things.
recommend.
Who stars in that?
Renee Zellweger.
That's right, because I was like, she's back.
Yeah, yeah, and wow, I mean, what a stage presence, just absolutely stunning. Yeah, I was really, really, really happy with that movie. And that movie also seems to like tick all the boxes that should be there for an Academy Award, and yet, yeah, it just didn't get anything.
Biopic, period piece, underdog.
Hmm. The whole 9 yards, and also it's one of their own. It's one of Hollywood's own. So it
Hollywood
really
royalty.
felt like it should. Yeah, it really felt like it should. But yeah, whatever.
Well, that's surprising. I haven't seen it. I do. I think I would like to see it, but I'm not sure yet. A few come to mind for me. John Wick 3. That should be best. No, I'm kidding. I
Oh,
mean, it was
right,
good, but come on.
right. Right up there
So,
with the Lion King.
yeah, I haven't watched the remake of The Lion King yet either.
Oh,
I saw the
boy.
Aladdin one, and it made me, hesitant about Lion King. So some of the movies that have been recognized by other places, but not the Academy for some reason. Knives Out.
Yeah. Nah, I don't know if that's worthy of an Academy, though. I don't know. It was good. It was
It was
very
good.
good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Dolomite Is My Name.
Oh, yeah, that was also good.
Nothing for Eddie. Nothing for anybody. Surprising, especially considering how much buzz there was around it.
Yeah.
And of course, I think out of the movies I've seen, Uncut Gems being just when I saw that, my first thought was, God, I wish I could write as well as this. This was amazing,
I
and
am so on the fence about that one. Go ahead.
it was just ignored all the way across the board. And I'm not saying Adam Sandler deserves an Oscar. I'm saying someone should have said he should be nominated.
Well, see, there you go. That I think that's also part of the problem. Part of the problem is that there's some kind of perception about whether an artist, whether they're director, producer, whatever, deserves the honor. Deserves it. And at this point, to make a major motion picture, you're talking about sometimes thousands of people being involved, and it's not just one person's vanity project. I mean, you're talking about a lot of stuff. So yeah, I mean, if the story has excellence, it shouldn't. The focus shouldn't be on just one person. I don't know. Stuff like that actually really bugs me.
Like I said, I'm not saying he should win, but
But the
there's
film should have been nominated.
absolutely. It made me care about basketball betting in a way that kept me on the edge of my seat. I had no idea what any of this stuff meant when I watched the movie, and they were tossing around the gambling terms. And then, as it went on, I'm like, wow, I am literally schwitzing over, a basketball game because of the really high stakes. And when a movie can draw me in like that and leave me wondering what's going to happen next, yeah, I'm in. I'm all in. And the fact that it was very well made, very well shot, very well written, extremely well acted, and still completely ignored by the Academy, even though everybody else is like, Uncut Gems is, a truly something to watch. It blows my mind.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Yeah, that I don't know if it was. Well, yeah, I guess it kind of was. I mean, that film is not nominated in any category.
Nothing.
So yeah.
That was the movie I watched, and I said, "Sorry, Quentin, that screenplay Oscar's got to go somewhere else."
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Again, because it took a subject that I had absolutely no interest in it and made me care about it. And you get that through good writing. I know that we just spent a good deal of time talking about how the Oscar doesn't recognize essentially women or people that aren't white men. And I also think there's maybe a short list of names that when a movie pops up on possible nominations that they're like, nah. I think Adam Sandler is one of those that no matter what he does, they're just going to see, oh, it's Adam Sandler? Nah.
Well, okay. So actually, I was about to say something that actually doesn't even that even when I'm thinking about it, it actually does. It shouldn't play in. My feeling is that this is this is the kind of thing that happens to writers often if you write genre specific. When you start writing genre specific, you are typecast into that genre, and no matter what else you do, even if it's awesome, nobody wants to hear about it because it's not the genre that you are putting yourself in. And in some ways, I feel like Adam Sandler, when he started in such a very specific type of role and continued on with it that it's hard for people to see anything else from him as being viable. And I don't think that that's right. I think it's wrong, but it but I see sort of like into what might be happening there. Although, to be honest, I sometimes think that the Oscar nominating process takes itself too seriously. So seriously that it just doesn't want to let anybody in that they don't, again, think is quote unquote worthy, which is really ridiculous.
I think one of the other names that could be on its no-fly list, Kevin Smith. He didn't win he didn't get anything for Chasing Amy back in the day. So right. I think this is a long-term issue. Oh, the guy that made Mallrats? No, we can't.
Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. Although I don't know, Kevin Smith has a more dubious sort of relationship with a bunch of people in Hollywood, but it shouldn't matter. Again, if your film is excellent, it should be considered for excellence. One thing I will say, from an original screenplay standpoint, I feel like Knives Out is the best choice in that category because from top to bottom, Knives Out is ingenious in the way that it visually narrates something that took a scriptwriter a heck of a long time to come up with. Even if you started from the end and worked your way forward, it's still an incredible labyrinth to visually narrate, and they did such an excellent job with it. So I really hope that's, as much as I love 1917, I really feel like Knives Out is the right choice there.
Yeah, Rian Johnson did a great job, and you could see it that you could see the points that he must have plotted out where he's like, okay, this is the problem. How are they going to get around it?
Yeah, I actually envision sort of like one of those big cork boards
Hmm.
and pieces of string being tied from post-it note to post-it note to post-it note about all of the different plot points. And one of the things about Knives Out that is incredibly interesting from a screenplay standpoint is it is very obvious that the they give everything away at the very beginning of the movie, so you know basically sort of what is happening without understanding all the nuances underneath it. So it's a very layered experience, and that is also really rare in storytelling right now, especially in screenplay. In original screenplays, it's very, very different. So
Yeah, completely agree that it's one of those movies. If you haven't watched it, watch Knives Out, where you know what happened, but you don't know what happened. I mean, you saw
right,
it with your own eyes, but you don't
right.
know what happened.
Right, exactly, exactly. We were talking about a group of us were talking about why we love a deconstructed murder mystery, and why we all wanted to see Murder on the Orient Express, and why it's so successful when this is done properly. And one of my friends kind of brought up, I think, the best point, which is it's not so much that we want to know who done it. It's we want to understand who done it, why. And then even that becomes a little bit cloudy, and you want to know who done it, why, in what way. Like, we don't want, as the audience, we don't want to know up front everything that happened, because then we feel like we're going to be cheated the rest of the movie. Like, well, what new things can possibly come out? And a good murder mystery does exactly that. It keeps
Hmm.
things unfolding little by little by little. And honestly, yeah, Knives Out is definitely a must see. Definitely.
I was on a Facebook article, and I don't remember which page it was, but someone commented that if I can remember the quote here, I don't think Knives Out was all that great. It didn't bring anything new to the table. Of course, the Knives Out defenders were out in full force, saying this, and this. I commented, no, it doesn't really bring anything new to the table as far as that story. But it's the first time in a while that it was done extremely well, and
Right.
that's what matters.
And also, if I can be so bold as to say, the dialogue in Knives Out is so cleverly written that if you go back and watch it after you've seen it the first time, you'll catch all these little things that are basically clues that you didn't catch the first time through.
So that means I have to watch it again.
It's definitely worth it. It is really worth it.
I could think of worse things to do.
I also, from another category, because it's not, well, actually, yes, it is. Um, as much as I absolutely love 1917, and I totally believe that from a cinematography standpoint, it's just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. You know what else was really amazing? I don't think it'll win, but I feel like it definitely deserved the accolade. Is The Lighthouse. I don't know if you saw that.
I have not.
It's disturbing. It's really disturbing, but it's excellently disturbing. Um, the camera angles are, oh god, sometimes they're like, it's hard to sit and pay attention, because the harshness is sort of right in your face at all times. Um, it it's so mood inspiring, and not inspiring like, oh, I'm inspired. Like, I mean, there's so much mood that it makes you feel, that it's the first movie I've seen in a long time that actually made me feel uncomfortable to watch, but not like I wanted to turn it off. Like, wow, they made the human existence feel incredibly difficult. And all of that through just camera and lighting and the sort of ability to create little pockets of space with the camera that are, oh man, some things even I couldn't figure out how in the world they did them. That was really, really good.
And that's one of those that's on my to watch list. And I'll be honest, I like I said before, when it came to the Golden Globe nominees, I saw two of them in the theater. The rest I watched at home, and I don't mean by paying. So when I find a good copy I can watch, I will definitely be watching that. We can talk about the other screenplays right now. It's we talked about Knives Out with Rian Johnson, Marriage Story. You haven't seen Noah Baumbach. You saw 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Parasite's getting a lot of recognition from the Academy this year, and best film, best director, best screenplay, best foreign film. I think it's probably a lock for that for sure. So do you think who do you think's going for best original screenplay?
Oh boy, that's a really tough one. See, I don't know enough about Marriage Story to be able to say for sure. But if I had to guess, I think I would say Knives Out.
You don't think Quentin takes the
No
trifecta?
I don't. I look. You know what? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was definitely an amazing story. It was good. I mean, there's just zero. You can't really argue with that. But what you can argue with is how many people it pissed off. And instead of it being the Judy Garland story, it's sort of almost irreverently boy, I don't know how to say this. I just from what I understand, from an absolute technical standpoint, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was an excellently conceived and written screenplay, no doubt about it. It definitely is worthy of this nod, absolutely. But it also steps on so many toes that I don't know. I feel like even though I don't want politics to be a part of the process, I feel like politics will be a part of the process. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino wrote this movie, spent the first quarter of it building up old time Hollywood. I say old time in its 50s and 60s, but building up that era of Hollywood, and then the rest of the movie just tearing it down. Because the star is aging out,
right?
And the way stars were treated as they were becoming less relevant, and it was a thing. And maybe you have a point when Hollywood as a whole doesn't want to self-reflect on that fact. Then some of the more direct insults and things like that too. But does it deserve the win? Put all politics aside, is it the best written screenplay?
Not when you compare it to 1917, Parasite, or Knives Out. No. I do think that it is worthy of an Oscar nod, but in my opinion, I just feel like from an original standpoint, from an original standpoint, I feel like 1917 was actually really strong, and Knives Out is only a little bit stronger because of sort of some of the clever tricks that they used in the actual screenwriting.
I look at categories like this, and if I can't get my hands on, an actual copy of the screenplay, I look at it and think, does this read as well as it plays out? And for Marriage Story, I can't really imagine reading that story and feeling the same way I felt without those performances.
That's a good point.
Knives Out, there's a little bit of that, but I think it also stands alone as a great read. I do think Daniel Craig brought something extra, but not necessarily the reason why, it stands out. 1917, I think, without, all of the cool cinematography and the great performances, I'm not really sure that it jumps from the page. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think is much the same way.
Parasite could definitely do it, but I feel like Parasite wouldn't get Best Original Screenplay just because it's foreign. And I don't mean that as a slight on foreign films. I mean, the screenwriting process is just so different altogether. I don't know. Although as an original idea, Parasite is amazing, truly amazing. I can't really talk a whole lot about Parasite because almost anything that I say is going to end up being very spoilerish, and I feel like after the Academy Awards, people will go, "Oh, what's Parasite? What's Parasite?" and want to see it.
I know my local, I don't want to say art house theater, but that theater, they've been playing it pretty regularly. I'm guessing it's not one that I take the kids to.
No. Oh God, no.
I got an oh God no. So yeah, I'm assuming this is going to be one of my late night watches. And since tomorrow's a holiday, I got all night.
Hey, see, there you go.
But those were the original screenplays, and sometimes a writer takes somebody else's work and adapts it for the big screen. And that's what these writers did. I'm just going to go with the titles here. The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, that's a bit of a stretch, Little Women, and The Two Popes. And you said you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, right?
Right. Yeah, I didn't see that one yet.
You did see The Two Popes?
I know what it's about, though. Yes, I did.
Okay. So what do you think? This is, I got to say, it's not as a strong category as Best Original.
This was a tough one, but I think from, I mean, we're basically just rolling the dice here. What I would like to see win is The Irishman, because I don't know exactly what source this was adapted from, but whatever source it was adapted from, they told it a really epic story in The Irishman. It's a slog to get through if you're not used to the more art house kind of movies that take their time to get where they need to go, but it is well worth sitting through.
I can agree with that. So you don't think Joker?
I don't feel like as an adapted screenplay, that's a good place to put that at all.
I don't think it's very adapted at all.
Yeah, that's source material. Whatever they're talking about in terms of the source material doesn't feel. I mean, obviously there was an adaptation to it, but it just doesn't feel like that's the strong. That's not the strong place to go there.
Well, I mean, it's a completely original story based on a few characters from the Batman universe, right? This is not a story that's been told before in comics,
right?
So in fact, it only lists for the nomination based on characters created by Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson. It's based on characters. It's not based on a book, a play, or anything at all. Just based on characters. So does that
Right.
mean that if somebody came up with a completely new, Sherlock Holmes movie that was good, and it got a nomination for the writing, it would be adapted because it's based on a character that already existed?
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not even sure what criteria they were using to create or to tell, because I don't know what source material they're talking about for Joker. Maybe there's something out there that they used that they sort of made a hybrid blend, but I don't know what it is.
Well, the source material listed is based on characters created by. So they took the characters really and like didn't really adapt any story.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like an adapted screenplay at all.
So I agree, it doesn't deserve to win. I think Jojo Rabbit, I don't know what to say about that. It was a great movie. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Although, to me, it confirmed my theory that Scarlett Johansson can't do accents and doesn't even try. I had this first feeling when I watched, what was it, Iron Man 2, and she's Natasha and not Russian,
right?
So there's that. And then seeing her in this, where she's the mother of the boy, and they're in World War II Germany. Everybody around her has a German accent, but she doesn't. It seemed weird.
Maybe there was a reason, though, that they did that. Maybe she really couldn't do it.
I don't think she can do accents. Just like Benedict Cumberbatch can't say penguin.
That's hilarious.
And by the way, if you haven't heard that video, it's very worth checking out. Benedict Cumberbatch can't say penguin.
It's so funny.
The penguins.
It's also cute. It's really adorable.
I think his agent got him that gig just to piss him off. But for adapted screenplay, I hear a lot of talk about Little Women. I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be upset because the original story is good. The Two Popes, something we haven't really talked about so far.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
No.
Oh, I thought it was really good. I can't say it was. I can't say it was award worthy, but again, it's one of those movies where I thought, yeah, the performances are great. The cinematography, it is what it is, but I enjoyed it.
I don't know why I didn't like it, but I just didn't like it. It just didn't do anything for me. Not that it wasn't a well-made movie. It just didn't do anything for me.
Kind of like how the Joker was for me.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like you can acknowledge and recognize the talent involved in making it, but it just didn't scratch that itch for you.
Yeah. I have to say, going back to the Joker, I walked into that movie not knowing what to expect and not thinking that it was going to be fabulous because of what I had read already on Rotten Tomatoes. And I thought, I don't know, maybe this is going to, there's so much controversy around it, maybe it's not going to be all that great. And I sort of cleared all of that out when I walked into the theater. And I have to say, I'm really glad that I did, because it definitely, it struck a different nerve than I think most movies are comfortable striking. I mean, there's a lot of, it's definitely, it is a story about Joker. It's just not the Joker that we have come to expect and know in the DC universe that we have built up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he wasn't a criminal mastermind. He wasn't a criminal at all. He was just a guy.
Well, he killed that guy. Well, we don't see, that's the thing. We don't even know that. The problem that not the problem. It's not a problem. But it's an ambiguity that started to feel like we were walking dreamlike through his world. And because it didn't feel like we had a concrete fix on reality during Joker, because of the way that we were seeing things through his perspective, because of the way that we know that he invented the girl and, kind of created in his own mind a lot of the stuff that happened, we don't even know if half of the things that happened actually happened. And so in his own mind, he was great. In his own mind, all these amazing things really did happen. But did they all actually happen? That feels very ambiguous.
Okay, that's fair. I suppose we could talk about performances, if you like.
There's one. Let's definitely talk about performances, but there's one category that never gets any love. Which, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't get any love. It doesn't get love, except Disney gets love. And that's the animated feature. And this year, there's a singular animated movie that is playing still on Netflix. It came out just before Christmas, called Klaus. And the animation style in Klaus is done to a large extent in kind of an old school way. And it is absolutely breathtaking. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And the story, I've heard everything about the story, from wow, that's so contrived, which is ridiculous because it's a Santa Claus story, so every Santa Claus story is going to be contrived, to I don't understand why they felt like they need to retell Santa through the eyes of somebody else. And I don't know if you were around when we were having the conversation. Yeah, you were there. About why I didn't like that the movie The Invisible Man, because I felt like they were taking it out of The Invisible Man, but in this movie, in Klaus, it actually works because the only way to tell a Santa story is basically through the people around him, right? Because you can't tell a legend by making the legend the center, unless you're talking about King Arthur. It has to be how the legend started. And this movie was actually so incredibly good. The animation was just stunning, and it didn't have huge 3D rendering or 2D rendering machines. It didn't have, the kind of stuff that now we are seeing that came out for like Toy Story 4 or How to Train Your Dragon. It's all, everything in Klaus feels like it was designed and created from a storybook, but it effectively is animated in a way that is incredibly compelling. So I don't know if that will win for animated feature, but that is my huge choice for that category.
I think when it comes to best animated feature, unfortunately, I'd say the odds-on favorite is probably Toy Story 4. But
yeah, Disney seems to always sweep that category.
And I don't think it's going to be based on the merits of Toy Story 4.
Nope, I don't either. Toy Story 4 was good. It was good. Did you see it?
But it doesn't. I don't think it deserves to win.
Yeah, it didn't rise to the level of excellent. I mean, it just felt like every other Toy Story.
Well, I mean, every other Toy Story is amazing, especially Toy Story 3, where I struggle to give spoilers for that because all I can say is the scene. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It was so emotionally powerful, and nothing in Toy Story 4 even comes close to that effect. And when you have to compare it, to Toy Story 3 because it's Toy Story 4. It just doesn't match up. It doesn't. It's not as good.
Yeah.
And I got to say, for the first time in a long time, that's the only movie I saw on the best animated feature list.
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking at it and I'm still like, yeah, I still wouldn't give it to Toy Story 4. See what I saw. I feel like an actual Academy voter.
I suggest honestly that Klaus is, it's not super long, but it's not really short either. It's a Netflix movie. It's definitely an awesome popcorn night to hang out on the couch and watch, and it really is worth seeing. That animation style is a dying. It people don't do it anymore, and it's really amazing to see how it was resurrected by combining technologies. It's absolutely, it's really worth it. It's worth it to see. I felt the same way about Klaus as I did when I first saw Spirited Away. I had that same feeling, like, yeah, the story's great, but wow, look at this animation. It's just absolutely astounding. So,
2 points. One, it was one of those movies the kids wanted to watch over the holidays, and I had already created the Christmas viewing schedule, and we had already added the Santa Chronicles from Netflix, which, by the way, amazing.
Yeah,
Kurt Russell as Santa. Wow.
That's pretty good.
And I just never got around to it. But, you were mentioning telling the story of someone from a different perspective.
Right. Well, taking the focus of the story when it's about a character, a protagonist, a very specific something very specific to a character, and telling it through another protagonist. And in this case, it actually worked.
I'm not saying that it shouldn't be one of the next Joker movies, because it could just be something completely standalone. But what if, in a horror style, that's how they made a quote-unquote Batman movie? From the perspective of the criminal that's being hunted by this demon in the night.
Well, that's definitely pretty interesting.
I'm not really into watching I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm Batman, over and over again.
It's I have the same problem with this as I have with Superman, because because I don't even like Superman movies anymore.
He's not an interesting character.
But see, that's just it. The reason that Superman isn't interesting, and I'm so sorry, Henry. I absolutely love you in The Witcher, so I apologize every time. But the reason that Superman is not compelling anymore is not because the character of Superman is not compelling. It could absolutely be compelling, but it's because we're still trying to tell the same old story about truth, justice, and the American way, with maybe a couple of caveats, with some, small tweaks to the adventure. And we can't do that. We have to reimagine it completely because it doesn't work in this time. We don't live in the 1950s anymore. And I mean, as much as I think some people sort of, get stuck with content being just at this time or whatever, if you can't break out of it, then your source material becomes irrelevant. So if you want to keep your source material, your content fresh, you have to be able to reinvent it. You have to be able to retell it. It's one of the I know we're getting off topic, but this is really, to me, this is sort of the epitome of why Hollywood doesn't do things very well anymore with retellings and things like that. I don't know if you ever noticed how many, since we were just talking about Christmas, how many Christmas carols there are, but there's a lot. And every single series, at least in the 90s, tried to do a Christmas Carol take at least once. It's just such a huge story, right? And
Yeah.
then this year they had the retelling of the Christmas Carol that was dark and bleak, and it was good. Actually, it's really good. But the point is that every time we retell that story, we add a little something to it, or we focus emphasis on a different aspect. Is it really Bob Cratchit? Is it really Ebenezer Scrooge? Is it the ghost? Is it whatever? And by doing that, we sort of create this beautiful ability to tie it in with whatever's happening in our world today. And I feel like the comics have stopped recognizing that that's what they need to do in order to stay current. I will say that the Marvel Universe does a better job at it. I mean, Iron Man definitely did a really good job with that. But the DC world seems to be really stuck in this idea that if we just retell the comics, everything will be fine. And you can't do it that way. It doesn't work that way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, staying too true to the source material can be a hindrance because that was the format that it worked in at the time.
The only DC, well, not the only, but the DC movie that stands out as being, hey, this was awesome, was Aquaman, and not just because of Jason Momoa, but because they like really retold the story and really retold the story. I mean, it wasn't a great story to begin with, so it's not going to get any like major, huge critical accolades from me, but it was still a better reinvention of the story than just retelling it with, a guy on a seahorse.
Okay.
And that's what I feel like that's what they do with Batman, though. They just keep giving him like new tech and
God,
saying
every time there's Batman in a movie, I have to watch his parents die.
Yeah. I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny in the sense that it's just such a tragic, constant. There's no way that you can tell a Batman story anymore without having to go through the whole thing all over again. And it doesn't make any sense. Why? Why do we need to keep doing that?
You know what? I'm going to say it right now. The 60s Batman movie is the best one.
Oh my God, we did that on Cinema du Fromage.
I wanted to be on that episode so bad.
That was crazy.
Because some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Terry actually defended that movie. Well, he won that movie. That was up against, I think, wasn't Batman up against Westworld? I think Batman.
Yes, it was. I was the judge on that.
That's right. And Batman won. And so yeah, there's definitely I think it was actually pretty good too.
It was also the only Batman movie where they didn't kill off his parents.
That's true. But the TV universe of Batman doesn't kill off Bruce's parents.
You just assume they're in Florida.
I feel like the TV version sanitizes it very neatly. But see, you know what? That goes exactly back to what I was saying, which is we live in a different time. We live in a time where we expect that if you are going to do something that requires us as the audience to sympathize with you, even though we know you're going to do very dark and terrible things, that we have to see why all your dark and terrible things happened, or how they happened. How did it happen that you were compelled to do all these dark and terrible things? And that's, if we can go back to Joker, that's what Joker really is, right? Joker really is the, why do you do these dark and terrible things? Well, here, let me show you. And Batman, it always flirts around, why does Bruce Wayne do all these dark and terrible things? But it always excuses them in a way that makes it seem like, but everything's fine because he's crusading for justice. And like, I feel like that doesn't work anymore. Even The Dark Knight, as, morally ambiguous as that was, still doesn't rise to that level.
I just realized what the Joker was to me. And I I don't remember the name of the movie, so I had to look it up real quick. Where is it? No, no, I can't find it. Oh, wait, yeah, The Clapper.
The Clapper.
Have you seen The Clapper?
I don't think I have.
It's a 2017 film starring Ed Helms and Amanda Seyfried. And basically, Ed Helms is this guy that his job is to be on infomercials in the audience. His
Oh,
job
wow.
is being a clapper.
Oh.
And some late night host or something kind of notices that he's in all of these infomercials. And he's very he stands out by trying not to stand out in the audience. So he winds up getting noticed. And it becomes a bit on this show, and the description is 15 minutes of fame destroys the life of a man who works as a clapper in television.
Oh, wow.
And I just realized, wait, that's kind of Joker, where basically he becomes a meme and things go downhill from there.
Yeah. Although I would argue that at the core of Joker is a kind of uh, cultural existential crisis. And again, I think that this is what makes it an amazing movie. It there is something incredibly timely about the way that uh, Joker experiences the world as we are experiencing it right now. It is so um it's such a horrible experience to think that people have, and yet we know a lot of people have the same exact kind of experiences, that it, it makes, by the end of the film, it makes you want to sort of reinvent your idea of what it means to be um, the villain. That, maybe we look at this a little bit differently, because maybe who we think the villain is isn't really who the villain is. I mean, I know it's convoluted, and I know that it's, there's a lot of complexity that goes into this, but uh, part of the issue, I think, with not being able to retell stories in a way that either makes sense or is some kind of evolution of the story, is that as a media consuming populace, we don't always put the work into understanding the art. uh we just kind of consume it and move on like it's fast food. And some movies, all the movies that were nominated for Best Picture, require some digestion. Um, and Joker is definitely in that category. It just takes a lot to digest that movie. It's I don't think that it's as straightforward as it seems to be.
Yeah, yeah. Again, you make very valuable points that I can't argue against, because you're absolutely right. I, again, didn't hate the Joker. I just, it didn't scratch that itch for me. And I'm not saying that, you know, the Clapper. I'm not saying the Joker is a ripoff of the Clapper or anything like that, because you can um, do similar things, but the Joker was still done uh, about a bazillion times better.
Right.
But just the idea that something similar happens to both of these characters, and their lives are never the same afterwards. Although
Right.
one does take it to a kind of unnatural extreme.
And again, if we're talking about what makes these films so amazing, I think we could look at any one of the films nominated for Best Picture, and we could find very similar threads that go along with them. I mean, one that we didn't talk about was Ford versus Ferrari, which is it's such a weird concept film. Well, then maybe that's not really the right word, but it feels like a concept film. It's very tricked out, and it looks beautiful. It's a gorgeous film. But at its heart is sort of like this the weird ideas that we have about, first of all, how stuff happens, and especially in a big corporate culture, and secondly, there it's such a weird idea to look back on things that we already know are a part of our everyday lives and get a fuller understanding for what they mean. And again, all of the films that are on this list, they all do that very thing. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Parasite, definitely. 1917, I don't know if 1917 does quite that. Marriage Story, from what I know about it, definitely does. Little Women, pretty much. Joker, definitely. Jojo Rabbit, again, from what I know about it, it definitely turns reality upside down. And The Irishman, for sure. So all of these films, they all kind of do this very similar thing where they're all sort of turning the world kind of in an upside down way, and explaining to us why any one of these events is so important. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That one for sure is like that is such an upside down idea. Well, upside down, like the whole movie is based on an upside down understanding of the people who were experiencing a very upside down event or events in time.
Yeah, the 60s were definitely that in a nutshell. And then to have Quentin Tarantino's take on that, where things went even more sideways.
Really sideways.
God, those when I was watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was entertained throughout, right? Was wondering when the Tarantino would kick in. Yeah, there's the witty dialogue and this, that, and the other, but I was waiting for that Tarantino. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then the whole thing happens at the end there, and I'm like, and there it is. And this movie went from pretty good to great to awesome, and it really steps it up a notch right at the end there, where whether you think it's good or bad, we went full Tarantino.
Oh, for sure. I mean, on a similar note, on a Tarantino note, there is this super long extended version of Hateful Eight, which I don't know if you've seen Hateful Eight, but
I saw the theatrical version. Yeah,
it's like the Hateful Eight on steroids. I mean, I don't know how you get meta with Quentin Tarantino. Like that almost seems like completely an oxymoron, but it's there. It's just wow. Yeah. The long version of Hateful Eight is crazy. Quentin Tarantino is such an interesting person. He's such a good director, and he's such an amazing presence in Hollywood, but he just doesn't care. I mean, he just doesn't care what people think about him. Well, I'm sure he does care what people think about him, but you know what I mean? Like he just doesn't he doesn't say it that way. He's always so, whatever happens, happens. I'm having fun making my movies, and nobody's going to take that away from me. No, I feel like that's perfect. It should be like that.
He is unapologetically a film nerd.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, this is a guy that's like, from a cinematographer not cinematographer, from a director standpoint, is like the golden boy in terms of, he came up from being a video store clerk. You don't get much more humble than that kind of beginning.
I imagine he was Randall in Clerks.
Oh, that's awesome.
You don't want to watch that. You want to watch this.
That's so awesome.
Before we have to run, let's talk about some of these performances. Best Actor, Antonio Banderas in Pain and Glory. Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Adam Driver in A Marriage Story. Joaquin Phoenix in Joker. Jonathan Pryce in The Two Popes as Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio. And you have seen, what, all but one?
All but Marriage Story.
I haven't seen Pain and Glory.
For this one, I definitely go back to Joker.
So you go back to Joker. I really want Adam Driver to win. I really, really want that, but I don't think it's going to happen. More than likely, they're going to toss it over to Joaquin Phoenix, which I'm sure Leonardo DiCaprio is like, damn it.
Yeah. that's yeah.
Because when I watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that scene where, the little girl goes up to him and she's like, that was the best performance I've ever seen. And he starts crying. I was like, yep, that's this is Leo's second Oscar.
Yeah, yeah.
And then again, for that, everything I said about the Joker, I cannot take away from Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
Yeah, it was down a rabbit hole. There's method acting, and then there's like absolutely being the character, and he just absolutely was that character.
For sure. Talk about some of the ladies. Best Actress, Cynthia Erivo and Harriet Tubman. Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story. Saoirse Ronan in Little Women. Charlize Theron in Bombshell. And Renee Zellweger in Judy.
So, I mean, my love affair with Judy. So I would love for her to win. I just absolutely think that would be amazing. But I'm sort of leaning toward Harriet, just because I feel like they're going to have to give a token Oscar to Harriet.
I can see that being a possible outcome. But honestly, I'm not. I haven't seen Judy. I haven't seen Bombshell. I haven't seen Little Women. And I haven't seen Harriet. So based on what I've seen, Scarlett Johansson is the only performance that I saw. But you have a point about the Harriet Award. I'm not sure if it would be deserved. Would you say it would be deserved if it won?
I mean, yes. Harriet was actually, my problems with Harriet are completely not about the technical excellence of the film. So it's just more about it's about the whole film altogether. And certainly as a lead actress, Cynthia was amazing, absolutely amazing. If we're gonna put things into like categories of okay, so who really did the best job? Renee Zellweger as Judy was actually, I think, the best. But I can also see Charlize Theron in Bombshell also. that she was really convincing. I mean, she was really convincing. I really felt like I was watching the inside of the Fox newsroom. It was pretty amazing. That was good. I liked it a lot.
I had no interest in seeing Bombshell, but that kind of makes me interested.
She was actually, it's hard to write a strong female lead and have a female lead take it and portray it as strongly as it's written, but you could really feel that the strength that was written for that part was absolutely empowered through uh through Charlize Theron. You really could feel it. Like it didn't never felt forced to me. It always felt like, yeah, this is exact. I'll bet that that's exactly what she said. Almost sassy, like, like, yep, yep, I can see that.
So let me ask you, since this might be a surprise, but I trust your opinion on cinema. Should I watch Bombshell?
I would say yes, it's definitely worth watching. It's, why else it's worth watching? It's also worth watching because it is definitely a moment in our history, from a both an event standpoint and a kind of pop culture standpoint, and knowing some of the stuff that went into how they made that and what it was based off of, because so much of it is true. I mean, I'm putting true in quotes, but I mean it really is based off true events. It sort of, it makes you think about things a little bit differently than you might think about them just right this very second. So I would say yes, it is definitely worth watching. And the performances really are great.
Okay, I will give it a look, but running against the clock here. Best Supporting Actor: Tom Hanks, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood; Anthony Hopkins, The Two Popes; Al Pacino, The Irishman; Joe Pesci, The Irishman; Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. To me, there is only one winner.
And that is?
Brad Pitt. It's Cliff Booth. He became one of my favorite characters from movies ever. I think Joe Pesci and Al Pacino kind of cancel each other out as far as the voters are concerned. Anthony Hopkins was, don't get me wrong, great performance, but
you don't think Tom Hanks has a chance?
I don't think he deserves it.
Really?
I mean, it was great, but it wasn't Cliff Booth.
Right. Well, yeah, that character is so much larger than any amount of life could possibly begin to describe.
He fought Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it's such a larger than life character.
But I could see Tom Hanks taking it because of what you said earlier about the political situation surrounding Once Upon a Time.
Yeah. There is that. That's why I don't think that. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I honestly, this is one big giant toss up for me. I just don't know. Supporting actor and supporting actress are so difficult to pin down.
Right.
Well, we only have 1 minute to pin down Best Supporting Actress. So real quick, Kathy Bates, Laura Dern, ScarJo for her second nomination this year.
I'm going to go with Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie?
Yep, in Bombshell.
I'm going to go with ScarJo because, again, it's the only one I've seen. I want to thank everybody, especially you, Jen, for joining me here for the rebooting of SCOP, and hopefully this will be turned into a weekly thing. I'll find someone to talk to on a weekly basis. I think I can do that. Jen, where can everybody find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at followingbliss1, and you can find my websites at moviesmakethemeal and criticallaughs.com.
And you can always find me on Twitter at SkidComic. And don't forget to look up Semicore Studios on Facebook. That's where I guess I'll be posting all of the updated information about all the shows I do, including the Backstage Slam every weekend. That's a wrestling podcast. SCOP, where we talk about entertainment stuff. And who knows where the conversation goes, because I had 5 topics scheduled for this show, and we never got out of the first one. And, more news coming. Released a new episode of Josh's World last Thursday. It was my birthday episode. And, just kind of gave a state of me address and a little bit of politics on the side. But right now, the marathon continues with Kinte, who has jumped back in. And thanks for joining us.